Last March, I made a mistake that looked completely harmless, but quietly destroyed almost half my fruit harvest. One of my trees was full of thick green branches and looked perfect, while the smaller tree next to it looked almost cut back and weak. But by summer, the smaller tree was loaded with fruit, and the bigger one barely produced anything, and here is the truth that most gardeners never realize. Leaving your tree alone is exactly what ruins your harvest, and most people are doing this completely wrong. Because they think more branches means more fruit, when in reality, those extra branches are stealing energy and blocking sunlight, and nurseries do not talk about this, because if your tree underperforms, you are more likely to replace it. In this video, I will show you exactly which fruit trees you must prune in March, and the one mistake that can reduce your harvest by more than 50%. If you do not fix it right now, thousands of home gardeners across the United States are putting in time, effort, and money into their fruit trees, and still getting disappointing harvests. You water regularly, you take care of your trees, you might even spend $20, $30, or $40 on fertilizer from places like Home Depot or Lowe's, thinking that will finally fix the problem. But when summer arrives, the fruit is small, the yield is low, and sometimes the tree barely produces anything at all, and the frustrating part is, it feels like you did everything right. But here is the uncomfortable truth most gardeners never hear. The problem is not your soil, and it is not your effort. It is the way your tree is growing, and more importantly, what you are not removing. Fruit trees do not reward neglect. They punish it, and when a tree is left unpruned, it creates too many branches competing for the same energy. Sunlight gets blocked, airflow disappears, and nutrients get spread so thin that none of the branches perform well. Studies from agricultural extension programs show that overcrowded trees can lose up to 50% of their potential harvest, simply because light cannot reach the fruiting wood. And here is the part that surprises most people. Two identical trees planted side by side in the same soil with the same water can produce completely different results based on pruning alone. Now here is where it gets even more frustrating, because while most gardeners are buying expensive fertilizers trying to fix the problem, experienced growers are quietly doing something completely different. They are removing specific branches in March to control how the tree distributes its energy, and that one decision is what separates a tree that struggles from a tree that produces heavy harvests every single season. And if you miss this step, everything else you do becomes less effective. In the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly how to prune your fruit trees in March, so you stop wasting growth and start getting real heavy harvests. And you need to pay close attention, because small details make a massive difference. You will learn which branches you must remove first, which ones you should never cut even if they look wrong, how much of the tree you can safely remove without stressing it, and why a simple $10 pruning tool can outperform fertilizers that cost $20 to $40 per bag. I will walk you through the exact method experienced growers use to increase fruit production by 30 to 50%, and sometimes even more. But here is the part you cannot miss. There is one extremely common pruning mistake that looks completely harmless, but can quietly stop fruit from forming for the entire season, and I am going to reveal that mistake later in the video. So do not skip ahead, because once you see it, you will never make that mistake again. Most gardeners think pruning is about cutting branches, but this is exactly where they start ruining their harvest. Because pruning is actually about controlling energy, and if you get this one concept wrong, everything else falls apart. And I will show you why in just a second. Let's start with apple trees, because this is where most beginners make their first big mistake. An apple tree that looks full and thick might actually be producing less fruit than a smaller tree. And here is why. When branches become too dense, sunlight cannot reach the inner canopy, and without sunlight, fruiting spurs slowly stop producing. Studies show apple trees can lose up to 50% of their harvest simply due to poor light penetration. But here is the part that surprises most people. Removing branches actually increases production because it allows the tree to focus energy on fewer, stronger fruiting points. And if you skip this step, your tree will look healthy, but quietly underperform. Now, before you move on, there is something you need to watch carefully, because this next mistake destroys peach harvests every single year, and most gardeners do not even realize they are doing it. Peach trees do not behave like apples at all. They produce fruit on 1-year-old wood, which means the branches that grew last year are the ones that matter. Now, here is where things go wrong. If you leave too much old wood, the tree spreads its energy too thin. But if you cut randomly, you might remove the exact branches that would have produced fruit. This is why experienced growers remove up to 40% of last year's growth and shape the tree into an open center, allowing sunlight to hit every branch. And here is the shocking part. Fewer branches can actually produce larger, sweeter fruit because all the energy is concentrated instead of being wasted. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever seen branches rubbing against each other or crossing inside your tree? Most people ignore this, but this is exactly what reduces your harvest, especially in pear trees. When branches overlap, airflow becomes restricted, and that creates the perfect environment for fungal diseases. Research shows poor airflow can increase disease risk by up to 30%, which directly reduces fruit quality and yield, and this is why experienced gardeners remove crossing branches first, before doing anything else, because improving airflow alone can save your harvest before the season even begins. Now, this next one is where many people go too far and actually hurt their trees. Cherry trees are extremely sensitive, and if you prune them aggressively, you can trigger excessive leaf growth instead of fruit production. And this is where beginners get confused. They think more cutting means better results, but cherry trees require balance. Removing only dead, damaged, and overcrowded branches is enough, because if you stress the tree, it shifts its energy into survival mode instead of producing fruit, and that is something most people never realize. At this point, you might be thinking more pruning equals more fruit. But here is where that idea breaks down completely. Plum trees prove this better than anything else. A plum tree can produce up to 100 pounds of fruit, but if the canopy becomes too thick, the fruit stays small and lacks color. And here is the key. Removing interior branches allows sunlight to directly hit developing fruit, which increases size, sweetness, and overall quality. This is exactly what commercial growers rely on to maximize their harvest, and if you skip this step, you are leaving size and quality on the table without even knowing it. Now, here is something that surprises almost everyone. Citrus trees do not follow the same rules at all. If you are in warmer zones like 8 or 9, cutting too much can actually reduce your harvest. Citrus trees rely on their leaves year-round to produce energy, and every leaf acts like a solar panel. And this is where most gardeners make a costly mistake. They over-prune and reduce the tree's ability to produce fruit. Instead, experienced growers only remove dead wood and lightly shape the canopy, because keeping more leaves means more energy, and more energy means more fruit. Now pay close attention, because this might be the easiest win on this entire list. Fig trees respond extremely fast to pruning, and many gardeners double their harvest without changing anything else. Figs produce fruit on new growth, which means removing older wood triggers fresh branches. that carry more fruit, and here is the interesting part. If you leave the tree untouched, it becomes crowded and less productive over time, but if you prune it properly each March, it keeps producing aggressively, season after season. Now here is the part that most people never fully understand. Pruning is not about making your tree look nice. It is about directing energy when you remove a branch. You are telling the tree exactly where to send its nutrients, water, and growth power. And this is why two trees that look completely different can produce opposite results. A smaller, well-pruned tree can easily outperform a large, neglected tree, simply because its energy is focused instead of being wasted. But here comes the mistake that quietly ruins more harvests than anything else. And if you miss this, your results will never improve. Water sprouts and inward growing branches. These fast growing shoots look healthy, but they are actually stealing energy and blocking sunlight from reaching productive wood, leaving them on the tree. Is like letting weeds take over your garden, and removing them early in March can completely change how your tree performs. For the entire season, now let's talk about how much you should actually prune, because this is where fear stops most people from taking action. Cutting too little does nothing, but cutting too much can stress the tree. Most fruit trees can safely handle removing 20 to 30% of their canopy in early spring, and in some cases like peaches even up to 40%. When done correctly, this balance allows the tree to recover quickly, while redirecting energy into fruit production, and this is the sweet spot that experienced growers follow every year. When you step back and connect all of this together, a powerful system starts to appear. Apples, peaches, pears, cherries, plums, citrus, and figs all behave differently, but they follow one core rule. Pruning controls light airflow and energy distribution, and those three factors directly control how much fruit your tree produces. And here is the best part. Once you understand this, you do not need expensive fertilizers or complicated systems. This method is completely free, and yet it can increase your harvest more than anything else, simply by making the right cuts at the right time. A few years ago, I had 2 fruit trees in my backyard that looked almost identical in size and health, but the results were completely different, and at that time I could not figure out what I was doing wrong. In the first year, I treated both trees the same way. I watered them regularly, I added fertilizer from Home Depot and Lowe's, and I let them grow naturally because I believed more branches meant more fruit. But by the end of that season, both trees together produced less than 60 pounds of fruit, which was frustrating considering the time and money I had invested. The following year, I made one small change that completely shifted everything. I started pruning both trees in March, removing crowded branches, opening the center, and cutting back growth that was not producing fruit. And the difference showed up faster than I expected. One tree jumped to nearly 80 pounds of fruit, while the other reached close to 90 pounds without increasing fertilizer costs at all. But here is where it gets interesting. Because last year I repeated the exact same pruning method and focused on timing, both trees combined produced over 150 pounds of fruit from the same space, while I spent less than $60 on basic supplies, and based on average United States grocery prices, that harvest was worth over $400. Now results can vary depending on climate and tree health. But when you look at these numbers, it becomes clear this is not just a gardening tip, this is a simple system that turns your backyard into a reliable source of food while saving you real money every season. If you want to turn this into real results in your own backyard, here is exactly what you need to do this week. Step 1. Go outside and take a close look at your fruit trees and identify any dead, damaged, or overcrowded branches, because those are the ones stealing energy from your harvest. Step 2. Grab a simple pruning shear from a store like Home Depot, Walmart, or Amazon. Even a basic $10 tool is enough to get started. Step 3. Begin opening up your tree by removing inward growing branches and anything blocking sunlight, because light is what drives fruit production. Step 4. Come back after a few weeks and observe new growth, because that is the signal your tree is responding the right way. Do not wait until next month, because this March window is where everything changes. And if you want to learn more simple ways to grow more food while spending less money, make sure you subscribe, because I upload new videos daily that show you exactly how to get better results from your garden. And before you leave, tell me in the comments which fruit tree you are pruning first. And as always, happy growing.